Right now it's my pleasure to introduce one of my colleagues here at Michigan State University, Bump Halbritter. Bump was recently promoted and tenured at the rank of associate professor. Yes, we're very pleased. And he is here to talk to us today because when we set the theme of the conference, which you all might recall, we tried to do with a guiding question. We asked the question, what is composing today? And his name was really on the short list of people who are really helping us to try not only to understand what that composing looks like, but how to do our jobs as teachers and researchers to help other people understand it. And to that end, as a matter of fact, he has a fabulous new book coming out. So yeah, we're not immune to this whole come be a special guest, plug your book whole thing. And this book is sure to be useful to you in a variety of capacities. It's coming out from Parlor Press. We just sent in the final version.
Final proofs.
Final proofs. Hot off the press is probably by 14-ish time?
No, one would hope by NCTE. So,
oh, excellent.
So David Blakeson tells me. But he's been telling me that for 2 years. So
it's called Mics, Cameras, and Symbolic Action, Audio-Visual Rhetoric for Writing Teachers. And that is not exactly the title of his talk today, but I suspect you're going to learn something about those topics and a lot more. So help me thank my colleagues.
Thank you very much. The talk actually today is called Teaching, Learning, Knowing, Writing, and Symbolic Action. And I got a bunch of stuff, so we'll see how this all goes. First of all, thanks a lot for having me. And I had a great time at this last year, and I'm really happy to be here. I was down at Watson, and ran back yesterday from Watson, and Watson was wonderful, and so I'm so very happy to be here. So thanks. Kenneth Burke says, we view language as a kind of action, symbolic action. And for this deterministic perspective, we proposed, I love this we, the royal we all the time, we have proposed the trade name of dramatism, precisely because we would feature the term act. And as I just said, I'm going to talk about a bunch of stuff, nouns, today. But I want to begin this discussion by focusing our attention on acts. Things that employ that stuff. Burke goes on, he says, a dramatistic approach to the analysis of language starts with problems of deterministic catharsis. This is why I love Burke. Deterministic catharsis, which is another word for rebirth, transcendence, transubstantiation, or simply transformation. In the sense of the technically developmental, as when a major term is somehow found to have moved on, and thus to have in effect changed its nature, either by adding new meanings to its old nature, that's what I'm going to be doing today, or by yielding place to some other term that henceforth takes over its functions wholly or in part. So deterministic catharsis really rolls off the tongue. The expression itself sounds dramatic. Deterministic suggests the linguistic logos, the word, however, it also seems to resonate with the reference to crisis, the urgency, finality, telos, end or purpose. Catharsis suggests, as Burke claims, rebirth, transcendence, transformation. And as such an expression, deterministic catharsis at once suggests death and rebirth, a lexical phoenix bursting into flame and rising again anew from the ashes of its previous manifestation. Logos sheds its skin to escape the constraints of a definition that is too tight, a word that's grown too big for its britches. So we're in a time of catharsis, deterministic catharsis. The particular instance of deterministic catharsis that I want to examine isn't some relic of history, a momentary event like a tsunami wave that forms and crashes and then dissipates. This deterministic catharsis remains in flux, like the ongoing ebbs and flows, the tugs and the pushes of the tides themselves, always moving, always changing, always affecting movement and change. We'll consider the deterministic catharsis of writing. And I will argue for the deterministic catharsis also of telos, that ancient term, as it's applied to our teaching of writing that's transformed. Our goal, our telos, will be to question the goals of writing instruction and to match those with the writing goals that we assign, asking when is a work of writing done and when is the work of writing done. As such, we'll attend to writing as a verb primarily, and we'll access that by way of the production of writing as a noun. The noun is the vehicle, the verb is the goal. So the questions that we've been posed today, what is composing today, we transform now to what is writing today. How do people learn and teach that? Today I argue that we expand that territory of writing by way of symbolic action. To those ends, we will go to a not unconference. We will get some symbolic action. Hey, it's Saturday. We'll get an operation. We will go shopping. We don't know where this is going. We will also talk about our problems. And we'll do a little chanting. And all of this in pursuit of our transformed conference questions. What is writing today? And what do people learn? And how do people learn and teach this? So again, I argue that we expand the territory of writing by way of symbolic action. This pedagogical approach that I want to take about teaching and learning is a remix of the old and the new. The pious, as Burke would say, the pious and the impious. What will help us make the new stick to the established? Duct tape. Let me explain. Okay. First, a confession. To allow you to know, to situate my ethos as someone who knows duct tape. I know duct tape. So let's go to that non-conference. In my years spent as a working musician, I learned the essential practical value of duct tape. Little at the time did I realize the full scope of its rhetorical value. That dawned upon me at a not unconference for writing professionals. I was presenting on a panel devoted to a discussion of electronic publishing opportunities for undergraduate writers and researchers, with an emphasis on the publishing of multimedia products. You can read about it all there. When I arrived at the room where our panel would present 1 hour before the presentation on the day, as always, and to scope out what we would need to use the room, here's the stuff I found. I found a table that was covered with pitchers of water and drinking glasses. I found 6 round tables. I found chairs for attendees. I found a long, narrow table for the presenters. And all of the tables, however, had white tablecloths. And the venue had supplied some notepads and also some pens for the participants. However, there were no presentation materials whatsoever. There was no overhead projector over there. There was no digital projector. There were no speakers, right? There was no projection screen. So none of these things were there. Of course, I was showing the movie not only as usual, but as promised. And of course, I was prepared, or nearly prepared. You see, I'm used to showing up at academic conferences, not on conferences, that are ill-equipped, or as in this case, completely unequipped for the sort of media that I was going to be showing. I brought my own computer. I brought my own digital projector. I brought my own speakers. I brought extension cords, and oh, of course, I brought some duct tape, as always, just in case. However, as you can imagine, I was unable to travel with one of these things, some kind of a portable screen. They don't really check into airports very well. And this room didn't have one. Yet, with all that I had brought, I was still unprepared to do my show. Venues for not unconferences usually charge big money for presentation media, and I understand this. However, reading the rhetoric of that situation, the not unconference organizers communicated the following decision for a conference on writing professionals who, according to their formal position statements, value audiovisual writing. Tablecloths are necessary, but presentation media are not. In other words, it's perfectly reasonable, even if undesirable, to conduct a not unconference on writing without presentation media. Audiovisual writing is the parsley on our disciplinary plate, Writers and writing professionals read papers, they take notes on paper, and they're not on conferences. And what they need is a room, some drinking water, a few notepads, some pens, some chairs, some tables, and thank God, some tablecloths. The basics, the pious materials of our work. We say that we value audiovisual writing for our students, but we don't expect that that'll be essential to the work that writing professionals do. It's not what we do, even if it is what we do. I'm grateful that those white tablecloths were there. Because with my roll of duct tape, we were able to make a screen. Duct tape made audiovisual writing stick in that session, at that non-conference. Duct tape. It wasn't pretty. The duct tape signaled an obvious case of jury rigging. The duct tape signals that this is not what we do here. And even if the few rooms that work with screens and projectors, the ones that didn't need duct tape, which tablecloths were tablecloths, there weren't any speakers. There's no audio. Oh, shameless self-promotion. Audio, even if it's incorporated in audiovisual media, is absolutely not what we do. We do text, bullet points, we do still images. It's not only at that unconference that I'm talking about, but essentially at every other professional non-conference in our field. I recently attended a presentation by one of my graduate students who had to have, at her session, attendees huddle around her laptop so that they could hear the audio of her movie, the one announced in the program. We apparently, as a discipline, don't recognize that these media are really ours. We write about them, but not with them. That's not what we do, even if it is what we do. And so I call our attention to the duct tape, a visual and practical indicator of hypermediation, to use Bolter's term. The impiety of audiovisual media, impiety, duct tape, a medium symbolic of our attempts to jury-rig audiovisual writing into our pedagogy. An ad hoc fix, something stuck on, not integrated. A thing awaiting a more permanent fixing. In this time of deterministic catharsis, of rebirth, transcendence, transformation, it's our business to listen and to look for what's here already, even if we don't recognize it as our own, even if it's duct taped into place for now. And where we notice that duct tape, we'll look and listen very carefully, metaphorically, for more permanent solutions to the temporary adhesion that it facilitates. The presence of duct tape has always indicated to me use. Duct tape is symbolic of purposeful, motivated, necessary action. It's used to correct infrastructures and protocols that were not designed for emergent actions. Musicians play shows in venues that weren't designed for them. Not for them in particular, not for their unique equipment, for their act. Even if a particular venue was designed for a musical act, it was most likely not designed for the musical act on any given night. Invariably, there's going to be cords and cables and stuff that's running around across floors where the musicians and other people need to walk. These potentially dangerous obstructions will be secured with, you guessed it. This facilitates the emergent action. This low technology, duct tape, helps musical acts fit scenes. Acts fit scenes, at least for now. Our emergent action is to situate the new work of our transformed writing within a pedagogy for teaching of academic writers. Some of our work will be realized as expansion. We're going to add some new terms and some tools and some practices along the way. For that, we're going to turn to discussions about music and audio recording and visual arts and these kinds of things from film and video producers. However, some of our work is going to be realized as reduction, as reallocation, by way of deterministic catharsis. We're going to reevaluate some terms and associated concepts in play to determine what fits, what makes our work, what is conducive to realizing our transformed writing. So let's embark upon a quest of deterministic catharsis. Even if we do accept that audiovisual writing or audiovisual media making is writing, that does little more than point to the duct tape holding that audiovisual writing to our syllabi. Deterministic catharsis paradigm shifting has to pursue piety, the things that we expect, through impiety, through impious means, the stuff we don't. The pious must be made impious first in order to be rendered pious anew. All right, so let's get some action after all that. I claim that the vehicle for terministic catharsis for our pious term writing is through Kenneth Burke's term symbolic action. Action is established as a lens through which we investigate the things that rhetoric does, what it accomplishes, how it moves people to accentuate or to participate purposefully in their animate and inanimate surroundings. Now about that operation. John Dewey distinguishes global operations from local processes. I've been thinking a lot about operations recently. Often I talk about it in all the things I've been writing, the stuff I'm doing with Julie Lindquist, the stuff I'm doing on my own, all this stuff. So, because I'm wondering, how is it that we unify the work that we do? And Dewey says processes are local and temporal. They're particular. But the things that you do in your class, the things that you do in yours, the things that you do in yours, the things that I do in mine, at your institution, yours, our students, what they're doing for all of their different purposes, they're particular, they're processes. And this is nothing new for us. This is the old stuff. But the relationship of means and consequences, which define an operation, remains one and the same in spite of all of these differences. It's a universal. So, in some way, even though we're all doing a bunch of different stuff, we're teaching writing. An operation, Dewey claims, determines any number of processes and products, all differing from one another, but being a telephone, he says, or a cutting tool, is a self-identical universal. That's a telephone. That thing that we used to have stuck to our kitchen wall, it's a telephone. They're universals, even though they're nothing at all the same. They're universal, irrespective of the multiplicity of special objects which manifest that function. He says that in Quest for Certainty, a study of the relation of knowledge and action. Great. So I began a long time ago in thinking about operations and thinking about what this does, thinking about teaching writing. Back when I was a graduate student, like 80 years ago, I began to make movies, and I then thought I'll get my students to make movies. And I'm still doing it. And if the viral popularity of YouTube culture is any indication, a whole lot of folks appear to be accepting that invitation to do this as well. But cameras, these things are only the front end, right? This isn't video writing in and of itself. That doesn't tell us about writing. Video cameras allow us to collect information, but they don't often allow us to manipulate or share that information very efficiently. Sometimes these actually do, right? The cameras here actually do. Not in and of themselves. It's the operation of capture, upload, edit, and share that has transformed video cameras, things that we've had for a long time, decades, into instruments of writing. The cameras have changed, but the most critical development for our purposes is the way that they now fit both literally and figuratively into the operation of audio-visual or video writing. But let me first give you an example. In the fall of 2010, 2 undergraduate students in my multimedia writing class, Nina Elias and Bethany Tomaszewski, proposed to do a video mashup, a music video using the song Wide-Emu by the group Phoenix. Now there was an immediate problem with their doing so. This song is fully protected under copyright, and they hadn't sought any permissions to actually do this song, or to use this song. The first one of these things showed up in what turned out to be a very long sort of line of high-profile mashups of this song. Appeared with featured the Brat Pack actors from John Hughes' 1985 hit film The Breakfast Club. In Hughes' film, the characters are dancing to this song, much as they are here. We're Not Alone was the song. It was by Carla DeVito. We all remember that, of course. In the remix, they were re-edited to be dancing to this song, Listen to Me. And this Brat Pack remix spawned a whole series of tribute mashups where folks dance around and deriving their own moves from the Brat Pack's iconic dance moves from the 80s. Many of these mashups have been posted to YouTube, and most have received tens of thousands of views. The Brooklyn Brat Pack mashup at that time viewed close to 250,000 times. So furthermore, YouTube can place links to resources for buying the music, and that's usually a sign now that the artist is considering the mashup to be in their interests and not competing against them. So their classmates and I figured, sure, it's worth the time, do it, make that video. Of course, obviously, they did. The visual footage in the Wide-Emu mashup dances to the groove of the song, with essentially no reference whatsoever to the lyric. As a result, that visual information is generated, captured, selected, and edited according to what I think of as 3 primary aims. It accentuates movement and timing that's in the song, replicates moves from the Breakfast Club and the other mashups, genre, and it also obeys self-referential energy. I know, nobody's playing. Self-referential energy, that's something that I talk about as the part of the video footage that behaves most like I do. Sometimes a person who dances to the song might be really good. Really long cuts of that person dancing makes us sit forward in our chairs watching with amazement. Other times, a person who's dancing to a song, well, they might dance more like me, hard. So, and most of the footage is useless. An editor will recognize that 30 minutes of terrible dancing may actually yield, however, very few instances of useful movements. Even if it's not right, there may actually be good stuff. Even if it's out of sync with the beat when performed, even if the move was completely disconnected from other moves, even if the dancer falls down immediately after. The editor doesn't need the dancer, necessarily, to be a good dancer. The editor needs useful footage. Now sometimes that footage is really hard won, but what makes it useful is what I call its self-referential energy. It's itness, it's magic. To be fair, this is true for good dancers too. In the Wide-Emu mashup, there's some really good, skillfully performed stuff. These guys, their footage was very hard fought. I watched it happen. But they're cool in here. So, in many ways, these clips start to entitle the energy of each performance. They sum it up. They sum up the symbolic action of the dancer. The editing both reveals and entitles the dancer's essential moves. And this is hard work. Along the way, the photographers learned what they did well and what they did poorly. Not because they obeyed or broke some kind of prescriptive grammatical rules of photography, but because their action yielded footage that was either more or less rhetorically useful. The editors learn what they need and what they can transform, what they can use, what they can't use. And the writers can then walk away from the product, or from the project, with both a product that's made by way of imagination, determination, planning, and also a whole lot of triage. As one of my graduate students entitled the act of videotaping interviews, said, "What a fun exercise in damage control." Writers learn that 60 minutes of unedited footage gets pushed to yield 4 minutes of edited footage that took 20 hours to select and put together. The writers learn their limitations, they learn their strengths, and they make mistakes, like backlighting. Here's a grammatical error of backlighting, and here's one that turns out to be wonderful. They seize victory from the jaws of defeat. They share their finished works with their friends, with their peers, with their family, and potentially thousands of complete strangers. They get feedback. One 4-minute video will deliver all of this opportunity for learning. Some of these folks, through hard luck, or through luck and hard work rather, and careful craft and revision, will make something really wonderful. Something like Nina and Bethany did. In her final reflection for the semester, Bethany said the following thing about the video: "It was a lot of work." By the end of the project, we did 3 5-hour shoots. We spent between 50 and 75 hours editing, and it seems worth it because it was really rewarding to be able to create something that's both enjoyable and make and fun to share with others. What made the hard work worth it? The operation of writing. Many hours of planning, followed by 15 hours of collection, followed by up to 5 times as many hours editing, followed by publishing the work to YouTube. A work that received more than 1,500 views within 1 week of its posting, and more than 4,700 views as of this week. It was also featured on the MSU homepage. My wife, after she watched this, said a very familiar question. "Okay, it's Fun. But how's it writing? How is sending a couple of students out with cameras to watch their friends jump around to some cool song, how is that the work of writers? How's this writing? It's art. But is it writing? We were divorced really quickly after that. I'm kidding. I actually said, thank you. That's what I need. It is writing, yes, because it participates in the operation of writing. Operation of writing. Even if it yields a product that we would think of as a work of art. Songs are works of art. They're written. Poems are works of art. They're written. And not because they have words. Songs are often instrumentals. They're written too. It's not the words. It's the symbols and the symbolic action that puts it together by way of the operation of writing. The operation of writing allows people to capture, mediate, manipulate, revise, and share ideas across time and space. They speak for us. Cameras throughout most of the 20th century allowed us to collect and mediate and share ideas by way of consumer photography. However, most of us were unable to manipulate or revise those images that we created, and our range of sharing those images was limited to our immediate face-to-face contacts. We made photo albums, we made home movies. Movies that not only were shot at home, but they were only ever played at home, or shared at home. Because we couldn't edit these movies, well, we needed to perform the movies for others. We needed to fast forward through the irrelevant bits or explain why it was, how it was, what was being captured, or apologize for the bad camera work, or the bad lighting, or the fast zooming, or the foul language of the camera operator. At least that's how it always seems to go in my house. The Listomania videos aren't home movies. They speak for themselves. They're composed by audiovisual writers who are guided by rhetorical aims. My students were motivated to join a conversation in the Burkean audiovisual parlor, the editing parlor. To pull off that mission, they needed to perform a critical analysis of the genre and to listen carefully to what was being said and how it was being said. They needed to plan what they were going to say in response. They needed to find talent, dancers, arrange schedules for videotaping. They needed to find and secure locations where they could videotape those dancers, locations that would help them tell their story. The MSU version, help them make their contribution to this conversation. They would need both recognizable and unique things. They would need to storyboard, that is, to plan those shots that they were going to need. They would need to schedule and secure the cameras and tripods and the other equipment that would be required to collect their footage. And all of that planning would facilitate them to respond to the local demands and the opportunities of the actual scenes of their video collection, the process. They would inevitably enter a location that would be scouted out to find something better right around the corner. And then the lighting that would make that location would look now suddenly very different from expected. Or a group of people would be suddenly having a class somewhere on campus where they never would have imagined a class being held on campus. This work demands planning and revising. This requires the abductive work of hypothesis making. John Dewey says that the more adequately the functional relation can be apprehended in the abstract, the better can the engineer detect defects in an existent machine and project improvements in it. Thus, the thought of it operates as the model. This is the working thesis. The plans and the music video makers function as a working thesis, a claim that sets the audiovisual writers into some kind of directed action. And yet along the way, the audiovisual writers, of course, as we know, writing is epistemic, they learn. The act of collecting will direct them to make new decisions, to hatch new plans and compose new theories based upon the experience being in this new scene, in the kairotic moment. In other words, the operation of audiovisual writing is realized through a series of ad hoc adjustments that yield the local process of carrying out the operation. As one of Nina's and Bethany's classmates puts it, planning is essential. Plan as much as possible ahead of time and expect it to go completely wrong. When it does, don't stress, be flexible. That sums up pretty much everything to do with the technical side of things. Photography is not writing. Capturing is not writing. Collecting is not writing. Unless, of course, it is. And so, a lesson that we might learn from Nina and Bethany is this. Remember where you're going. And where we're going, if I remember correctly, is we were going to go shopping next. So let's go shopping. There we go. Because we teach writing, the features and the specs of the cameras mean nothing to us if those cameras can't communicate with the equipment that we'll be using to edit, because editing is writing. Editing allows photographers to revise, reconsider, recontextualize, rearticulate, redistribute the information that they capture on film or on video. Consequently, a cell phone capable of capturing, storing, and editing and sharing video is a writing tool that your students can use to engage the operation of video writing. A professional video camera, a really good one, that won't connect to the computer that you're going to edit on, isn't a writing tool. It's just a good camera, but not good for what we need it to be good for. It's no good. As with all writing tools, that capability, what it can do, is irrelevant if we can't engage the capabilities of the writer, which she can do. The camera must be able to participate in the writer's individual and local process of the operation of writing. And the operation of writing is an operation of symbolic action, which is, of course, rhetoric. And the operation of rhetoric is always about connecting more than cameras to computers. It's about connecting people. It's about identifying them. It employs symbolic means for inducing cooperation in beings that by nature respond to symbols, as Burke tells us in Rhetoric and Motives. It's always compensatory to the vision. And so I encourage you to look for duct tape in order to see problems, unlike the actual duct tape that's fixed the problem in that not on conference I was talking about. To make that makeshift movie screen, this duct tape is now going to be this metaphoric duct tape. And what does that stuff look like? Well, it starts to look like this stuff.
Alright, I think it's recording. Day one of filming. Tell us what's been going on.
Been shoving a camera in my face.
Come on, this is for science. Something weird's been going on in our house, and we want to figure it out. Tell us more about it.
Can't we go to dinner? This is my last fry.
Alright, yeah, fine, let's go eat some. Okay, we're all set. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
You know the rules, right?
Yeah, say Bloody Mary 3 times.
You sure you're ready?
Yes, come on.
Alright. Bloody Mary. Bloody Mary. Bloody Mary. I think I'm stuck. I think I'm stuck in the door. Whoa. This door is not a normal sized door. Something pulled me out of bed. This is the demon in the house. I think we've been eating too much fast food.
Yes, please, yes, please. Yes, please.
I'm loving it. Let's get out of here.
So there's plenty more than that. And it also gives things like this. So in a moment I'm going to tell you a little bit about the project, the assignment that asked them to do that. And then also the final assignment that came along with this to say, let's make a documentary of how we actually made it. A project that actually has turned into a really wonderful teaching tool for me, and I'll show you why. Maybe. There it is.
What not?
We first met during some class sessions. We threw some stuff up on the dry erase board. We started paneling out a storyboard.
Which was totally necessary given our time constraints because I mean we had 24 hours to do this thing. We had to know where cameras were going to be, when the cameras were going to be there, who's going to be there, what scenes we're doing when, what order. So I mean that I think took the bulk of our time was the planning phase. It was good. I mean there's a lot of creative energy in our group. I think we all had plenty of ideas, no shortage there. Too many sometimes. We got off topic a lot, but.
Tell me about the off-topicness. What did that do to the group?
It really split us apart, you know, there's a lot of drama, there was a lot of group, the alliances, I was trying to think of what they called it on Survivor. Alliances are like, you know, one group would be for an idea, and one group would be against an idea. Their leaders would have a mutiny against them, the groups would split again. Sometimes we were all on our own, and it just felt like...
Straight out of mice and men. Straight out of mice and men.
And at this point, we had already decided we wanted to do a mashup between Paranormal Activity, our homage, our initial idea, and something that was a modern issue. We settled on fast food consumption. So we were storyboarding various ways that we could bring fast food into the Paranormal Activity trailer that you see online.
Whatever happened to us when we
So we watched a bunch of
I
trailers.
don't remember anything.
¿Cuánto te ha costado?
Voy a grabar para ver lo que pasa. Espero que cuando lo pillemos con la cámara descubramos qué sucede.
And as we did this, we sort of start.
So we can start to see how they were starting to model from the things that came before it. And I'll talk about the assignment again in a moment. But first I want to say some things about this. So what does it take to do this kind of work? Well, it takes computers, and it takes software, and it takes workspaces, like the ones we saw them working in. It takes people. If you're lucky, you get a little Danielle the boss in there, using Watson. It takes coursework, and it takes assignments. It takes some kind of an oversight. So in this particular assignment, I asked for homages. I asked them to work in groups of 4 or 5 to make homage videos. And what's an homage video? Well, there are a couple ways we can go about it. I asked each group to go out and find any film, whatever they want, and at least as long as it fits the honor code, that is 1.5 to 3 minutes in length. The purpose of the homage is to replicate the action, the camera angles, the sound, the lighting, as best as they can. The group can propose to do an homage that does a parody like this. They make their own project, but that project is drawing upon a genre. It fits other expectations that are there already. They have to match those lighting, the lighting, the camera angles, and all of those things. So I asked them to pursue these projects in several different phases. They have to present a proposal in class. They show the clip that they've chosen to replicate or parody. They identify the materials that they'll need to complete the project: equipment, location, cast. They indicate what kinds of roles or activities each group member might be fulfilling. Then they propose a timeline. They also prepare a storyboard. They film and edit all the stuff. They workshop that stuff in class around each other, and then they present it at the end. And what do they turn in? Well, they turn in the proposal summary, 20%, storyboard, another 20%, video, 30%, leaving 30% for their individual reflections. And what those reflections do is they say, here's what we planned to do, and here's what we actually did. It didn't turn out that way. They track their learning. So beyond all of these things and these kinds of assignments, it also takes lots of cameras, because they all do different things, these cameras. So we have cameras. We also have, and this is the part, folks, microphones. You never, ever, ever have enough microphones, because they all do different things. Microphones listen differently. They can't shift attention the way we do, so we have to pay attention to how microphones work so that they'll listen to the stuff that we want as sound and not listen to the stuff that we don't want as noise. This is the heart. It also takes 10,000 accessories. There's never enough accessories. You know what this one is? Steve Krause knows what this one is, doesn't he?
No.
Yeah. This is the connector plate that puts the camera onto the tripod. I want to talk about an Achilles heel, kids. This thing, if you don't have this, you got this, you got this, you don't have this. You carried it all that way because you don't have.
That's me, by the way.
These things aren't hard to lose, by the way. You need a bunch of those. You also need some money to be able to get this stuff, to put it in your folks' hands. When I came here, there was none of this stuff. I had to go figure out how I was going to get money to try to realize the stuff that I thought might be good stuff to do. And you'll need to do it too. But it really takes problems. And I wanted to talk about our problems, so here it is. Dewey says in Experience and Education that problems are the stimulus to thinking. That the conditions found in present experience should be used as sources of problems is characteristic that differentiates education based upon experience from a traditional education. So, a problem that was guiding why I decided to do an homage, when are they ever going to make homage videos again in their scholarly career? Hell, I don't know. Probably never. I'm not teaching the homage. I'm motivated by a problem that students don't know how to use these materials. I don't have any microphones with me today, unfortunately. They use those materials as writing materials. And so that turns into a learning goal for me. How I can get my students, I want to get them to see and hear filmmakers, audiovisual writers, storytelling choices. And to do that, I create an assignment that either says, make homage videos, or go produce some interview-based informational videos, where they're going to take these and microphones out into the field. Much like I asked them to do the year prior, when I asked them to go out and actually create some videos for our professional writing program, which yield products that look like this. I'll fast forward this just a tiny bit to the really relevant part. So, as you just saw,
Can you just
here
skip
it
over
is,
you?
really. All right, realistic.
Really, content management involves managing people. The analogy is a large project. It's like flying a 747. You're more or less in the cockpit. You carry out your flight plan and you will hopefully land the plane. That's the successful outcome that you're hoping for, right? But when you're in the tower, you become aware that there are lots of planes, all with people in them, making lots of individual decisions. And at first it looks like chaos. But then if you watch long enough, you start to see patterns.
That video is used right now on our website to help actually in advising to show folks the kinds of things that they'll do in Bill's class in content management. Bethany said that one of our Listomania authors concluded her final reflection for the semester with these words. This class has made me curse technology and count my blessings. It's changed the way that I watch commercials, music videos, TV shows, and movies. Instead of being a passive viewer, I'm now thinking about the process of creation. How many cameras were used? What kinds of B-roll were incorporated? Why is this video cut in this way? Just thinking about the decisions of writers. I've begun to analyze the composition of the film, the camera angles, the framing, the timing, the sequencing, the music, the audio effects, and how all of these things are layered and mixed to make a piece of multimedia art. I now have the skills and the knowledge to make that art. Okay, so I said we do some chanting, and this is it. My project today has not been to attend to the multitude of our local processes. I don't know what y'all are doing. I don't know why y'all need to do it. Rather, our aim here has been to proclaim our unity by way of identifying our operational concerns, those that enable us to see beyond our applied lessons to the learning goals, our motives, that fit acts to scenes, and scenes to acts. But if this is how we can approach our work, how can you approach your work? What will guide you through your specific concerns? And for that I offer this mantra. I am a writing teacher, I teach writers. So finally for now, accept that the technologies and the infrastructures of creating and sharing audiovisual writing are in constant and rapid flux, because they are. From semester to semester, it may be nearly impossible to keep up with all of these changes, believe me. Resist the urge to try to be responsible for all of the content that your students are going to need to access. Even as you may assign a handbook in your class to help your students address writing issues that emerge for each student, direct your students to search the internet for blogs and video tutorials, for user manuals, for audio-visual equipment and software that they're going to be using. My students regularly Google their way to answers about lighting and camera operations, and about learning how to perform special effects and post-production fixes in specific editing software and specific operating systems. For example, why would I teach how to burn out the video resolution to everybody in class when that's not necessarily what they're going to need? However, when they start to do the homage for the paranormal activity and they see that they need to recreate that, we need to learn that. They each need to learn what they need to learn. This tells us an awful lot about the association method that we use to teach grammar as well. Directing your students to these resources is not passing the buck. Not passing the buck for learning that information yourself. It recognizes that audiovisual writers need to learn more than how to make an audiovisual project in your class. In short, they need to be able to do this stuff when they leave our classes. Their lives as audiovisual writers, in those lives, they are going to need to learn again and again how to solve software problems, hardware problems, and asking them to do so in our classes can help them develop sustainable audiovisual writing practices. So repeat after me. I am a writing teacher. Teaching writing. Rock. Thank you very much. Question? Concerns? Tomatoes? Left them speechless again. What are you guys doing? Are you doing this stuff? Any movie makers out there? Yeah? Of course, Timothy. Timothy, does this resonate with your experience?
Yes, in all respects. And I'm lucky that a lot of the infrastructural concerns have been passed on to something that we have at Oakland University called the Student Technology Center. So I didn't have to go out and find money to make all that stuff happen. But these thinking about writing as a process that doesn't just involve composing with words, that involves composing with other modalities, video, image, sound, is something that I stress in my pedagogical approach with my students, who 75% of them have never worked with video editing software. And trying to build bridges between the familiar, working with words, and the unfamiliar, working with multiple modalities, is a lot of what I do with my first year writing students, with the majors who take our video composing class, that kind of stuff. So I'm always trying to make these kinds of connections and making this sort of argument for them, but also getting them to discover the bridges that will help them to bring what they already know to the table.
Yeah, Bill.
Yeah, to touch on that comment, in the tweet stream I heard or saw a really interesting comment that I think circles back to your pious and impious binary, which is, I think, a really useful thing. And that was, someone pointed out that your comment about you don't need good dancers, you just need good footage, that's something that she tries to teach in her research writing class.
Yes.
Because students, in my experience, do this. They focus on getting that one good source that's going to anchor their whole argument. And of course, that's impossible. It sends them on this spiral to find one article in the library, which is not what we want to do. But this notion of embracing the impious, you don't need a good dancer, you need good footage, and then bringing that into the writing of a research argument, that's brilliant.
In first year writing, not only that, but it's the layers. When you start breaking things into layers, you realize that you don't need to have stuff happen in sequence either. It happens way out of sequence. And that's the storyboarding thing. When you shoot homages, you start to see that you need to shoot everything with every scene that the camera's going to be looking in this way. You need to shoot all of those scenes. You don't shoot this one and then move to this one, and then come back over to this one, and then go to this one, and then try to replicate it again back over here, because that's the way it goes. You shoot it completely out of sequence, you bust it all up, you take the stuff that you need, you get rid of the shit you don't, and then you put it together the way you want, the way writers do. You don't write it in the way, and research write it in the way you read it. You write it in the way that you need it, the way your argument starts to progress, right? You start to break things up in that kind of way, and that kind of being able to start to see the chunks through the layers, and all of those kinds of moves can really start to help folks understand how they start to construct the work that they do in the other types of writing. There you go. Who's scared of this stuff? Who's scared to do it? Why?
Part of it is, where I'm at, this is not accepted because outside of the department, it's considered not to be writing. So there's the constant pushback from the professional schools and other schools that you're not really teaching them what we need them to know when they get to us.
There's a book that's coming out very soon. It has 3 chapters at the beginning that are theoretical discussions about what writing is and how it works, and what the operation of writing is, that may potentially provide us with some language to provide to those chairs, those reluctant deans, those reluctant provosts, those reluctant colleagues who potentially can start to do that. There's this book, I understand. First 3 chapters does that. The next bit does the rest of the stuff.
I'm coming from the other end at the same university, and so I teach digital media studies, and we make videos and documentaries, and these are all freshman students, and that's kind of what we do.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I'm trying to reach then back to the writing program or the College of Liberal Arts, and trying to say that this is writing. So I'm trying to justify it coming from the other side, saying we're already doing this, and you need to acknowledge that this is a type of a form of writing. So this is really interesting for me as a way of justifying to them that this is writing. Lori, of course.
Which is funny because I'm the director of writing. So she's got me, but the problem is everybody else around us.
Yeah.
So
Where we came from, Donald Murray and that whole group of folks told us to teach writing as a process, not as a product. And so when we start to fetishize the product, the movie, we're not making movies, we're not movie makers. We're not making movie makers. We're not teaching the homage video. We're not teaching the documentary film. We're using these things as ways to teach the process of writing. And if we don't do that, then we probably are going to stand up to the criticism from those folks who said, what the hell are you doing? But if we do accept it along that mission, that's where we say, this is within the operation, within the verb, within the writing lives, within the kinds of decisions that writers make. And it helps us reach, potentially, students who are not already prepared to imagine a writing life in a traditional way. A lot of our students are unprepared, they're unfamiliar with the kinds of writing that we're going to ask them to do in the academy. But they're not unfamiliar with writing. They're not unfamiliar with texts. They're not unfamiliar with arrangement. They're not unfamiliar with invention. They don't lack things to say. Giving them other opportunities to consider how they can do something well and emerge as someone who's done something well can now give them the thing that Eric Lindemann tells us in Rhetoric for Writing Teachers. You use your students' texts as the texts of your class when we teach them. This participates in that. Yeah, Stephanie.
Just to build on that, for Lori and Allegra, so last spring we had a first year writing conference here, and I think we're doing it again this year. Yeah, okay. And one of the, this is bad because I can't give a specific example, but Bump may remember. What I do recall is you came in, and I think it was after one of the video we did, we presented our remix projects, which in this case was videos. And Bump came in and had seen part of the presentations of my students did along with colleagues, and you asked them, if you might recall, some really good questions about what they learned about writing and composing from making the videos in their first year writing class as one project amongst more traditional writing composition. And they had immediately, and it was interesting because I remember the one student, who's not one of my students, initially said she didn't know anything about video or something like that, but then she started talking about it, and you were able to show her that she did. So I'm just thinking about something like this as a way to take back TVM with actual experiences from first year writing students being able to articulate how they learned about writing from composing.
And especially when you're working with groups of folks, you know, you get these constellation of stars suddenly in your class. I don't know if your classes are like mine, but in the years that I've been doing this, I've noticed that there's always 3 or 5 students who are always going to be the ones who are doing really well on the writing assignments. And there's a bunch of people who aren't always going to be the ones who are going to do well on the writing assignments. And you know, hopefully by the end of the semester, more of them are doing really well. But one of the things that I noticed when I started to do this, the first time I did it was in a basic writing class, where I had a lot of international students. And I said, how can I get these folks who aren't in control of English language very well, and who are in my class because the university has told them that they don't write very well. So that's why they're in the class in the first place. They don't think of themselves as writers. How can I get them to go out and interact with the other folks in this institution, the folks from whom they've been othered, and try to get them to use their language and make decisions and speak through them? And it seemed like a documentary is a really cool way to go about doing that. You know, put microphones in their hands. And it also taught research, because what does research need? It doesn't need assertions, it comes to assertions. It needs questions. And what do you do with a camera and a microphone and a person sitting in front of you? You ask questions. So you start your research project with questions. We're able to use that then as a springboard for all the kinds of things that we do later on.
Could you talk more about assessment? Because I noticed in your presentation, you stated there was 20, 20, 30, and 30. So a lot of the emphasis, in my mind, is on the process. But in the component of the 30% of the actual video, I've done a project similar as this with my first-year students, and in the component in their product, I did a collaborative assessment. I was wondering if you did something similar, or how you assess that portion.
Yeah, in a variety of classes, I do it in a lot of different ways, but usually, especially in first-year writing classes, and in these kinds of classes as well, I want us to all participate in assessing this, and I figure that as we're making these things, we're becoming experts in making them, and so we should be able to make decisions about what's good and what isn't good. And so usually what will often, especially in first-year classes, what we usually come up is those folks are very reluctant to take over assessing themselves. They don't trust each other. They trust the system. And so what we almost always come to is a thing where I get 50% of the assessment, they collectively get 50% of the assessment, nobody assesses their own thing, they assess each other, they put that in, they get an average of all of their assessments in mind. We collaboratively author the assessment rubric, what we're going to do. I offer some examples of that in my book, but there's all kinds of ways you can do it. Those things are governed by your learning goals, not by the videos themselves. The videos themselves are going to, some of them are going to be awesome. Some of them are going to suck. And if they suck, and we've asked them to take a risk on something they've never done before, they should be punished because they learned so damn much making a bad video. But at the same time, we should all appreciate what is the nature of the, oh my God, that's so good version of it too. I usually call it the wow factor. It usually has 10 or 15% of the overall grade. That's usually what folks come up with. So there's all, the place that you go for your assessment is your learning goals. Yeah.
I hate to cut it off.
No.
But it's sort of like, you know, how the pastor goes on, everybody's wondering when the church supper is going to start. It's lunchtime. We encourage you all to have some of these conversations over lunch. This is an unconference. Persuade Bump to do some more of this in like the afternoon. He's got a whole office full of cool stuff. Maybe you can shoot some videos. So thank you. Thank you, Bump. Zoe, we'll be back here at 10 to 2. Thank you.